Well, welcome to Flame of Truth again. We're glad you've tuned in, and we're going to continue a series we've been talking about in my church. We call it Open Windows, various doctrinal beliefs, and trying to find a way to put a very Christ-centered, grace-oriented spin on each of them. Over the years, as a pastor that speaks on the road, I fly out tomorrow to go to Philippines and Dubai and to Ghana. So I'm always collecting stories that I can use at the beginning of a message or to help illustrate a point that'll give people a little warm moment. And many of them had to do with the second coming and the judgment. How many jokes are there about coming to, St. Peter and so on? So I heard one the other day, maybe you've heard it, about a group of guys showed up in heaven and Peter says, "Can I help you?" And they said, "Yes, we're all from Brooklyn, New York." The guy who told it was from Brooklyn. And he said, "We're from Brooklyn, we had a car accident and we all died and we would like to come in together into heaven." Well, Peter said, "I don't think we've had anybody from Brooklyn before. Sorry if you're from Brooklyn. And so I better go ask God to see if it'd be okay." "Okay, we'll wait right here." So he went back and asked God and he said, "There's a group of guys here that died in an accident from Brooklyn, New York. They'd like to come in together." And God said, "I don't think we've ever had anybody from Brooklyn here before. Maybe that would be good for the place. Sure, go ahead and let them in." Went back out to the gate. A minute later, Peter comes running back to God and he says, "They're gone, they're gone." And God says, "What do you mean they're gone? The guys from Brooklyn are gone?" "No, the gates are gone." Well, it's not a very nice joke, I suppose, if you're from Brooklyn, and I change it to whatever country I'm from, just for fun. Why do we tell all these jokes about the judgment, where someone is going to sit up in heaven and decide if you are good enough or satisfy whatever criteria you need to get in? And of course, that's ultimately the question. What is the core? What is the passport? I have to take my passport tomorrow. What is the passport we have to get in? So we'll talk about that a little bit today. Many of you have heard my Michael Jordan stories along the way. So I was in Chicago during the high years of Michael Jordan, where Michael Jordan would take the last shot. Everyone else would get out of the way, and Michael Jordan would go 1-on-5 and do something spectacular and win a championship or a playoff series. And the whole stadium would be dancing and rocking, and we'd go outside and say, we are the world champions. We didn't do anything. Michael Jordan did it all. And the Bible has that sort of a cosmic salvation history theme, is that everything in salvation boiled down to this one drama, mano a mano, between Christ and Satan. It's like David and Goliath. And Goliath said, "If you win, we will be your slaves. But if I win, you have to be our slaves." Everybody on both sides was in their trenches watching to see the battle, like Clint Eastwood and John Wayne kinds of movies, where there's a final moment where everyone else is hiding behind wagons and behind walls, and they're waiting to see if the good guy wins, the village will be safe. If the bad guy wins, then the whole place will go crazy. Everything depends on the battle between the two champions. And that's what we believe. Jesus came down and he lived a perfect life. If he had sinned for one single time, even by a thought, that would have ended. We would all been lost. But when he won the victory over Satan, he was undefeated. He never sinned a single time. 33 years. Goes all the way to the cross. Even though he was tempted to let it go, as we talked about on Easter recently, he was tempted in the garden to say, "God, take it away from me. I don't want to do this." He stayed, "Not thy will, not my will, but thine be done." And he dies on the cross. Then he rises from the grave. They had the Roman guard, they had the stone, and they rolled it all away, and the Roman guard was knocked down. I saw it again this Saturday. We had a whole old movie from the 20s. The greatest story ever told, the great gospel by Cecil B. DeMille. And then we had live organ. Incredible to see that stone rolled away and all the earthquake and everything. Incredible to see it on a movie 80 years old. And Jesus comes out and he says in Revelation 1, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I'm the living one. I was dead, and behold, I'm alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and hell." Jesus said, "I am the one. I am the way, the truth, and the life," John 14. "No man comes to the Father except through me." He says, "I am the one. I am the way. There's no other way to get to him." Romans 5:19, "By one man's sin and death entered the whole world, but by one man's life came to everybody." Christ is the champion. He's the all-star and wins for everybody. I've told the parable before, just to refer to it quickly. A group of us were playing basketball down at the beach, Venice Beach. We joined a game against another team, playing by ones. When we quickly realized we're getting killed. We're down 9-0. We call timeout, we ask for help. Next to us is all of a sudden a big tall player, 6'6", with a shaved head. He says, would like me to play with you? Yes. And we begin to play with Michael Jordan on our side. What will we do? We pass the ball to him. Let him shoot. Let him do it. He makes every shot. He blocks all of their shots. That's what Jesus can do. Come down to the end of the game. We're just getting out of the way and cheering him, passing the ball to him, and he does it all. Come down to the end of the game. He makes the last shot. They're mad. They're scraping and biting and all that. But he's got blood pouring out from everywhere. It doesn't matter. He still wins the game. When he wins the game, we carry him all over the court. We win. But he was the reason we won. When he wins, we all win. And so that's the gospel. And the whole beach was there ringing around the court. And they all said, we've never seen anyone play like that. Even the losing team bowed their caps and they said, he's the best there ever was. Christ is the champion. He was the all-star. He came down and won the battle against Satan. And when he wins, we all win. That's all you have to do if you have Jesus. The Bible says, he who has the Son has life, 1 John 5, verse 12. So one question, he won the battle, you have him, you're a fan of Jesus, you're with him like we were in Chicago. We were fans of Michael Jordan and the Bulls. When he won, we were all world champions. When Christ wins, if you're a fan of Christ, then you win. And it's all you need to pass through the judgment and go past the gate of St. Peter's. Well, we have a dozen questions that people have asked me over the years. Let's see how quick we can go through these questions. I come from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Wherever you come from, why are we Adventists? Means second coming. Why do you believe in a second coming? Jesus, they talked about him in Luke 24, verse 50. When he had led them out to the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and blessed them. While he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven. Then they worshiped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy. And I read that the first time. I had to preach through the Gospel of Luke and came down to the last week. What is he talking about? How could they have pinned all their hopes on Jesus and now he's gone, all their hopes are dashed, and he flies away back to heaven? How could they come down the mountain with great joy? I was just there a few weeks ago at Calvary and at the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. Incredible to look out over Jerusalem. And Jesus left and he says, I'll come back. How could they say with great joy? Well, I began to think about it. Number one, I suppose it could be that he promised the Holy Spirit. He says, I will send you the Holy Spirit. And so we believe that when Christ left, he sent back something that was even better, because Christ can only be with us one-on-one. The Holy Spirit can be inside of each of us all over the world all the time. And so we have Christ with us still through the Holy Spirit. Maybe that's why they had great joy, because they still had Christ through the Holy Spirit. Or maybe it's because when he promised, the angels came down and they said, this same Jesus whom you've seen taken away will come back in like manner as you've seen him taken from you, with clouds and with angels. So there was the promise he was going to come back. They thought he would come right back soon, in their lifetime, maybe a few weeks or months or years. Never imagined 2,000 years. Maybe that's why they had great joy. He's coming back. He's coming back. But you know what I think why they really came down with great joy? They had just been fishing and doing whatever they were doing when someone come along and said, come follow me. And they had had the greatest adventure of their lives. They were with Jesus. Jesus is not just God. He is the most incredible being. Children ran to be with him. People would walk for miles to be with him all day long, go without food. It says they were amazed every time. No one's ever talked like this before. Jesus. But they weren't just part of the crowd. They were part of the group who got to be with him 24/7. They were with him all the time. And then when they died, they thought it was over. They got 40 more days to be with him again without having to share him with the crowds, just being by the Sea of Galilee. I was there at the beach, they say, was where this all was, by the Sea of Galilee. Jesus, the most incredible being. And I think that Jesus was so incredible that when they came down the mountain, they were still filled with great joy because the joy of being in the presence of Jesus more than made up for the loss that he was leaving. That's why we are Adventists. Because we know someday we're going to go to heaven and we're going to see Jesus face to face. I was in a small group one time where one of the ladies happened to be from, I think, the Catholic Church or somewhere. And she said, but she was kind of searching for a new relationship with God. But she said, you Adventists are too focused on the second coming. You need to enjoy life as it is and take responsibility for life instead of just waiting for an escape where you will go away. A few months later, she was a nurse downtown in kind of home health care, terrible downtown south side of Chicago. And she had seen enough. And she says, now I see why you folks look forward to heaven. But we don't look forward to heaven just for mansions and for freedom from sin and to see our loved ones together. We look forward to seeing Jesus, to walk through the gate. Sometimes kids will say, you know, I don't want Jesus to come too quick. They want to grow up, they want to get married, they want to have sex, they want to travel, they want to do all. Then Jesus can come when they're old. No. They don't know Jesus well enough yet. The reason we are Adventists is that we walk in the gates. We will see Jesus face to face. I say to the people who pass away, did a funeral the other day, the moment they slip away, their next conscious moment, they may sleep in the grave, who knows how long, their next conscious moment, they will see Jesus face to face. That's why we're so excited about the second coming. We're just camping here. It doesn't matter what spot you will have at the great banquet table, how many miles it may be, how far you are from the head table. You will feel as if you're next to Jesus and as if you had all his attention, as if you were one-on-one. That's what it means for him to be omnipresent. Question number 2, what do the other world religions believe? They all have a variety. Jews can say there is no afterlife. Some, they'll say your only memory is what your family goes on, or the buildings that you built, or people's memory of you. Some have more of a heaven. Islam, they have a kind of a heaven, but very low odds of you making it. I grew up in the world of Buddhism in Thailand, where technically they don't have a God, but they have a nirvana, which is the absence of anything, absence of being. No one's ever really been there and come back to tell us exactly what it is like. I asked one person, you know, what are the odds of making it? He just began to laugh. 60,000 lives, I'll never be good enough. Christianity says in one life, you can live one life and make the right choices and be related to God, and you can be in heaven. And it's not just nirvana. It is not just spirits somehow playing harps on a cloud or in bottles on shelves with God. It means a real life, the best of our life today, and then far beyond that. No eye has seen, no ear heard, when mind is conceived what God has prepared. Incredible. Isn't it interesting that every single world culture has some understanding that there's another life coming? Ecclesiastes 3:11 says God has placed eternity in our hearts so that every culture longs for something more. This cannot be all there is. That's what we believe. Number 3, is it wrong or selfish to want to go to heaven for some of the more material and sensual blessings that God has promised? There are some who say that isn't right to want to go to heaven for the mansions or for flying all over or to be able to study or to be free from pain or stress. You should only want to go to heaven to be with Jesus. Well, I understand the meaning of that, but I would say the Bible is filled with these promises because they do make us want to go. Yes, we want to be with Jesus. But there's a reward. Jesus says in Revelation 22:12, behold, I'm coming soon and my reward is with me. Many verses on reward in the Bible. And God is not afraid or unwilling to use the promises of streets of gold and mansions and living forever. And he says it is far beyond the greatest thing you can imagine. He wants us to take our world today and imagine the very best, Hawaii, mansions, whatever it is, and then you extrapolate and project beyond that. And he uses that as motivation to say, it's worth it. It's worth it to make the kind of choices you want to make today to say, I want to be in heaven someday. That's what he promises. Someone told me, he says, once in a while, he said he was in an airport and he forgot a sandwich. He bought a sandwich and then something distracted him and he left a sandwich in the restaurant. Lots of people might forget something. Nobody forgets their Mercedes. It all depends on the value, see. What is heaven? You might forget it if you have a low value. But when you understand what heaven is, Little boy, when his father came in, said, "Dad, you have $50? What do you need $50 for?" See? What do you need $50 for? Father got mad. All you want is more money. You always want to buy toys. Boy went up to his room, was crying. Father went up there and said, "What did you want?" He says, Dad, I heard that you made $100 an hour. And so I wanted to buy an hour. I had $50. I wanted to borrow $50 so I could buy 1 hour of your time, Dad. How much is it worth to you to have time with God? It all is a matter of value. And if you understand what heaven is it can be far beyond anything we could ever have here. There's no party on earth here that is worth missing out on that party in heaven. Number 4, if God is so anxious to come, why has it taken it so long? When he says, "Behold, I am coming soon." We call this the delay. Why is time delayed? He says, "I'm coming soon." Paul said, "The night is far gone, the day is at hand." Where? That's why the Jews can't accept Christ, because the world hasn't changed. The world has not been redeemed. Well, one answer is that people say time is different with God. God is outside of time. And days as 1,000 years. But he says that to us in our time, we're in time. And he says, "Behold, I'm coming soon." Some will say it's the gospel hasn't gone to all the world yet. And there's much truth to that. Matthew 24:14, this gospel of the kingdom will go to all the world. And then the end will come. That's why I go preach. That's why we raise money. That's why we have LLBN, to try to spread the gospel all over the world. But some will say, no, what God is waiting for is the harvest, what we call the harvest principle. In God, we're like wheat growing, and God is waiting for the harvest to be ripe. And when God is waiting for a critical mass of a group of people to be so committed to Him and so bought into His belief and His lifestyle and His values, until His name is on their forehead, until they would rather die than do anything that would dishonor God. When God has a people that are committed or living a righteous life, they will be His witness to the universe that it is possible. When Satan said it was impossible, he was wrong. God is waiting for a group of people to live and perfectly reproduce His character. Another argument is that God is waiting for the cup of iniquity, the cup of evil to fill up in the world. It's hard to understand. There's an awful lot of evil that has happened over the years. My particular view is that God is waiting for His character to be true to the world. Satan is the father of lies. He's been telling lies about what God is like forever. Jesus had to come down here and say, "No, I'm not like that. I am like this." 2 Corinthians says we have the truth about God in the face of Jesus. And we believe somehow at the end of the world, there will be a final witness that will tell the world what God is like. Revelation 14, verse 5. No lie was found. These are 144,000 with the name of God on their forehead. No lie was found in their mouth. They refuse any of the lies that Satan has told us about God, and they only want to tell the truth. And there will be a final witness to the world. 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 10 says, they perish because they refuse the truth and to love the truth. If you want to be saved at the end, you will love the truth about God. You will live and die to tell the world what God is really like. And you accept none of Satan's lies. Next question is, who are the 144,000? Real quickly as we get to this. Are they literal or symbolic? We would say they're not literal. No one knows the 12 tribes anymore. There's not only going to be 144,000 right on the number they're going to be saved. It is a symbol of all spiritual Israel who will be saved. What about the great multitude? Revelation 7. I study Acts chapter 2, and here we have two groups. One group is in the upper room, the most special group who have been with Jesus, the disciples who have seen Christ alive and followed Him everywhere. They're disciples. And they are praying, and they're finally filled with the Holy Spirit, and then they go out and they preach to Pentecost, and thousands of people come to Christ, great multitude. And so the upper room people are a type of the 144,000. A group of people at the end of the world who have committed to Christ. They have been with Christ everywhere, and they have His name on their forehead, and they have no lie in their mouths, and they are filled with the Holy Spirit and the latter rain, and they go out and they preach the truth about God. That's 144,000. And then the great multitude are all those who come through the message of God. I think what God is waiting for is for the world to hear the full truth. He cannot come until we have told the world what Jesus is really like and the way the Father really is like. There's going to be a final showdown. Finally, there's going to be these two sides. God will finally have to let Satan do his worst. There will be evil, will not have any limits. No shackles will be put on Satan. You do your worst. It'd be like an election. Okay, spend. Here's enough money. Spend. Buy all the spots you need. Try it all. We have an election going right now in our country. And there's all kinds of things going back and forth. Finally, there will be an election where God's full truth will be there and Satan's full truth will be there. And everyone will have a chance to decide. Would they rather live in a universe with God's plan or with the other side? There will be no gray, no lines of nuance. Truth, one way or the other. Revelation 12-14. And then people will have to decide, what are they going to do? And then finally, we begin to move into the last days. One question that always comes up is, will there be a time of trouble? How could there be a time of trouble if God is a God of love? Is God really going to find a way to send plagues down and torture and punish people like this? Or could it be, when Satan said, God said of the tree, if you eat of the tree, you will surely die. Satan says you will not surely die. Two systems of truth, two belief systems. And God will finally say, do you want to see what the universe would really be like under Satan's power? And he withdraws all his power and he allows evil to be its worst. Then I think we will know what God is really like and what Satan is really like. I have a parable I've used for years. I had a friend who played basketball in college. Marble Jones, he was the best. Incredible how good he was. And he was so good at passing the ball, he was a delight to play with him. And because he would give you the ball and you could make easy shots. He would win all the time. But there were some people who don't like playing that way. They wanted to have the ball all the time. They didn't want to pass. They didn't want to be in this kind of a spirit of camaraderie and cooperation and team. So they finally just left and they formed their own game in another gym in my parable. And there they had fighting and they were tough and they were gunners and they just played for themselves. And gradually there were so many fights and so much trouble. They finally killed each other off and finally the lights went out and finally the game closes and only the game where the Jim of Marble and his group were still playing. I think it'll be like that at the end of the world. Is that God just finally lets go. The people who don't want to live God's way, part of his community, part of his game, just choose to go to another life and another world. And then they can choose, which world do you want? One, the lights will go out. One, the lights will live forever. Number 7, what is the close of probation about? The Bible says in Revelation 22:11, he who is righteous still, he who is wicked still. There will be a time when the judgment will be settled. And everyone will have decided one way or the other, which way are you going to go? Revelation 15:8, and the temple was filled with smoke and no one could enter the temple. When Solomon dedicated the temple, it was filled with smoke because they were beginning the ministry of the temple. And now at the end of the temple in heaven where God has been doing his forgiving and ministry, finally the judgment is over. Everyone's decided. No one's going to change. The smoke fills the temple and God comes. That's the close of probation. I grew up scared to death that the close of probation would just sort of show up. And what if I wasn't ready? No one's going to show up 5 minutes later and say, hey, let me in. God does not close the door until he looks around and says, is there anything else I could do to win your heart? Anything else I could do to convince you? Any other evidence, any other questions and answers? When everyone has made a final decision, that's the close of probation. No one will be surprised. When will the remnant church be formed? I grew up with the idea that the remnant church was sort of already settled a long time ago. And I believe that God has given my particular church much truth to give to the world, the remnant message to give to the world. But the remnant, officially, those who will be saved. Now any church is filled with people that are a mixture. Some will be saved and some will not. Those who will be saved will be formed at the close of probation when everyone makes a choice, one or the other. No gray, no nuance. Sheep and the goats. That's when the remnant church is finally formed. John 10, where I have sheep not of this fold, they will hear my voice and they will come. That's when it'll happen. Number 8, somewhere I heard that there would be a time without a mediator. That there would be a time when you would have to go through a period of last days and the plagues without God, without the Holy Spirit, without forgiveness. No, Jesus says, I am with you always. Hebrews 13, I will never leave you. Hebrews 13:8. No, God will always be with us. Hebrews 7:25, Jesus, whoever liveth to make intercession for us. We will always need grace. We will always need Jesus. We will always need the power of the Holy Spirit. What it means when it says there will be no mediator, no intercession, is that God has been intervening to keep evil from being unlimited. Otherwise, the world would just go crazy. Romans 8 says the world is groaning under the bondage of sin. There will be a day where God will say, no, I'm not going to intervene anymore. And then we'll see what the world is like. But God will protect the righteous. Psalm 91. What about the secret rapture? And there's a movie called Left Behind. We don't have time to go through this at great length. The idea people could just all of a sudden evaporate and be taken to heaven right out of their planes and cars and everywhere. No, we want to be very careful. The Bible is clear. Every eye will see them. If you haven't seen Jesus come, then he hasn't come. Yes, it is true that there will be two people at the mill, or two people in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. Yes, that's true. But it won't be a surprise. Jesus is going to come with a shout and the trumpet of God and take those of us with him. It'll not be secret. We will all see. There will be no 7 years taken off from Daniel 9 and brought here to the end of the world and Jews taken to heaven and missed the time of trouble. No, we're all going to live through it, but God will protect us through the whole time. There's no second chance. You live your life, you make a choice, finally one way or the other for God. What will heaven be like? Far beyond anything you've ever imagined. You will walk into heaven and just go, this is what I've been waiting for. Everything else has been camping, waiting for that moment. Finally, there will be all the judgments. Every question will be answered. The judgment of the millennial 1,000 years, and finally the great white throne judgment with a great video where God shows all the moments of salvation history, the cross. And now we had Easter, and we will see the movie as if we were there. And everyone will bow and choose and say, God, you were right. The whole universe will be bowing to worship God. That'll be the final moment of the great controversy. And when the wicked are finally dead, they will die knowing that God was right. And every righteous person will bow and worship God forever, free because he's God of love. That's the gospel.